voice. We heard what you said on November 2nd, and we're going to seriously cut spending, and we're going to start with our own budget. We're proud to do it, and we're going to step forward and lead and make you proud. Thank you so much for the opportunity to address on this issue, and I yield back the balance of my time.
Gentleman yields back. Gentleman from Pennsylvania continues to reserve. Gentleman from California.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. At this time, I'd like to yield 3 minutes to the gentleman from Mississippi, Mr. Harper, a member of the House Administration Committee.
Gentleman is recognized for 3 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for yielding. Mr. Speaker, I'm eager to enact the Republican governing agenda that focuses on creating jobs, driving down spending, and shrinking the size of the federal government. Republicans will take swift action to turn America from the failed economic policies of the last 2 years to the conservative principles that promote prosperity through individual freedoms and liberties. Our plan includes initiatives to pay down the national debt and put the federal government back on a path to a balanced budget. This goal can be achieved by employing fiscally conservative policies just like this. Mr. Speaker, the federal government is broke, borrowing 41 cents of every dollar that we spend. Nearly 1 in 10 American workers is unemployed, while the federal government has added 100,000 new jobs. Washington continues to record trillion-dollar deficits despite the fact that family budgets get smaller and smaller. The government cannot continue to grow while Americans' wallets shrink. As lawmakers, we must lead by example. For this past Congress, my first term, my congressional office has come in under budget, voluntarily returning approximately 10% of the members' representational allowance. This gesture has not impacted the quality of our representation and our constituent services. During this time period, my office has replied to over 37,000 emails and letters and connected with nearly 82,000 constituents via teleconference. I urge Congress to follow this example by providing taxpayers with a fiscally responsible operating budget. Our path to a balanced budget begins today, and it begins with this vote. With that, I thank you and yield back my time.
Gentleman yields back. Gentleman from California.
Mr. Speaker, at this time it's my privilege to yield 3 minutes to the gentleman from Georgia, a new member of our House Administration Committee, but a veteran of this House, Mr. Gingrich. Dr. Gingrich.
Gentleman is recognized for 3 minutes.
Mr. Speaker, I thank the gentleman for yielding. I thank Mr. Lundgren. I thank Mr. Brady. I thank Mr. Walden and the members of the transition team, many of whom have spoken on this issue. Clearly, it is time for us, we members of Congress of the House of Representatives, with House Resolution 22, to show good faith in regard to tightening our belts. It's been said, Mr. Speaker, by other members that cutting the member representational account is kind of routine for a lot of the members. I know that this past year I returned something like $160,000 of the MRA to the Treasury, and over the course of my 8 years in Congress, in the aggregate, some $900,000. And quite honestly, that's more than a 5% cut. So it can be done, and many members have done that as well. We have concerns, of course, as where that money goes to. Does it go to truly reducing the deficit and long-term debt? And I will be introducing, Mr. Speaker, legislation later on today that by law requires that that money that's turned back in goes back to the taxpayer. But this piece of legislation, House Resolution 22, is something that I think will have wide, if not unanimous, bipartisan support. And as I say, the former chairman of this committee, Mr. Brady, now ranking member, the current chairman of the committee, my good friend Dan Lundgren from California, of the same mind in regard to fiscal responsibility and doing what is right for the American people. November the 2nd, they were telling us, look, we are sick and tired of you guys just keep throwing money at things like $1 trillion cost of the stimulus bill and another $1 trillion for patient protection and Affordable Care Act. Some people recognize that better as Obamacare. But, you know, when you've got $1.4 trillion worth of deficit for 2 or 3 years in a row, no wonder you add $5 trillion to the deficit, to the long-term debt, and you get up to something like $14 trillion. So, Mr. Speaker, at a time when there's a 9.8% unemployment rate and families across the country are forced to tighten their belts, I wholeheartedly believe that Congress should lead by example, and that's what we're doing with this bill. I appreciate my colleagues giving me a time to weigh in on this. I fully support it. I look forward to being a member of the committee, and I thank the gentleman for yielding time to me. With that, I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. Gentleman from California.
Mr. Speaker, at this time I'd like to yield 2 minutes to the gentlelady from Michigan, Ms. Miller, who has done great work in the past about the operations of this House.
I thank the gentleman for yielding. Mr. Speaker, we have a spending problem here in the Congress of the United States. We know it, all the members here know it, and certainly the American people know it as well. And over the past few years, we've run deficits of over $1 trillion each year, and we've driven our national debt to over $14 trillion. And on November the 2nd, 2010, the American people spoke out in a very loud and clear voice. Stop the reckless spending. The Republican majority elected on November the 2nd heard the call of the American people, and we will start the spending cuts today by cutting our own budgets by 5%. You know, since my election to Congress, I've always tried to be a good steward of the money that's appropriated to my budget to serve my constituents. In the last Congress, I returned actually about 11% of the money that was allotted. In 2009, I returned nearly 8% to the Treasury, and in 2010, I expect that return to be about almost 14%. And I'm sure that many members can make similar claims here. A cut of 5% for members, for leadership offices, for committees is a very important first step in getting our spending under control. And some may say that 5% doesn't cut nearly enough, but certainly it is a welcome change, and we are going in the right direction rather than the wrong direction of increasing these members' allowances that we have seen for too many years. If we cannot cut our own budgets, how can the American people expect us to start cutting spending? And I would urge all of my colleagues to join me in sending this important message to the American people that we are very serious in cutting spending. We get it. We heard what the American people said in this last election, and we're starting here right now with ourselves. I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. Gentleman from Pennsylvania, yield time. Gentleman from California.
Mr. Speaker, this time I'd make an inquiry as to whether the gentleman has any more speakers.
I don't think so. No.
If the gentleman is going to yield back the balance of his time after his statement, I'll do the same on this side.
Gentleman from
Mr.
Pennsylvania.
Speaker, I yield back the balance of my time, and I urge the adoption of this resolution.
Gentleman yields back. Gentleman from California.
Mr. Speaker, I yield myself such time as I may consume. Mr. Speaker, I would like to thank the gentleman, my friend from the great state of Pennsylvania, who has worked on a bipartisan basis most of the time. And what I mean by that is about 85% or 90% of the work we do on our committee has to do with making this place work, helping members do the job that they were elected to do to represent their constituents, and making sure this institution of the House of Representatives works. There is a sense of pride of the institution that I think marks our committee, and we try in a very real way to work both on the Democratic and Republican sides to ensure the productivity of the membership here and to ensure that, frankly, the people get their money's worth. About 10 or 15% of what we do has to do with election law, and I might say that that's not always as obviously bipartisan. But we've always done it in the spirit of civility and always done it in the spirit of respect for one another, and for that I would like to thank the gentleman from Pennsylvania. Mr. Speaker, this is an important vote. In comparison to the trillion-dollar budget and trillion-dollar deficit, people might say this is a small amount. It is not a small amount. It is a serious 5% cut with respect to the operations of this House in very, very significant ways. It is a down payment on the future actions of this House with respect to other operations of the House, but as we scan across the entire federal government, this marks the down payment on that new vision. And so I would once again like to thank the Congressman from Oregon, Mr. Walden, and I have just discovered that I do have another speaker here, and with the indulgence of my friend on the other side, at this time I would like to yield to the gentleman, Mr. Walsh from Illinois, 3 minutes.
Gentleman from Illinois is recognized for 3 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I apologize. I snuck up on you there. I rise today to support Resolution 22 in the House. We were elected this past fall to do what we said we were going to do, to lead by example when it comes to spending and tightening our own belts. Following through on this key pledge that we made in the Pledge to America, I think, is vital. We're taking the first step before we ask others to tighten their own belts. And it's important to understand this is a first step, hopefully, in an ongoing effort to continue to cut costs. This will impact each and every one of us, and I think it's very important to the American people that they see we are talking the talk and walking the walk. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Gentleman yields back. Gentleman from California.
Mr. Speaker, with that, I would urge all members to support this resolution. Let's make it a bipartisan effort. Let's show that we have the commitment of the membership here towards responding to the reality of our times. And with that, I would yield back the balance of my time.
Gentleman yields back. All time having expired, the question is, will the House suspend the rules and agree to House Resolution 22? Those in favor say aye. Those opposed say no. In the opinion of the Chair, 2/3 of those present. For what purpose, gentleman from California, rise?
Mr. Speaker, on this I would ask for the yeas and nays.
Gentlemen ask for the yeas and nays. Those in support of the request will rise. A sufficient number having arisen, the yeas and nays are ordered. Members will record their votes by electronic device.
So a vote underway here on the floor of the House to cut 5% of the House operating budget. That would be about $35 million. So as we said, this vote underway here now on the floor of the House, a 15-minute vote as this 112th Congress gets underway this week. Next Wednesday, the Republican majority in the House is scheduled to vote to repeal that health care law passed in the last Congress. And on C-SPAN 2 right now, we have some live coverage for you all day, in fact, from the House Rules Committee. They're talking about the rules for the floor debate on that repeal legislation. The exact name of the legislation is sponsored by House Republicans, is the Job-Killing Health Care Law Act, and that's being talked about in the Rules Committee right now on C-SPAN 2. The repeal expected to get the votes needed in the House, but would still have to be taken up by the Senate, where the Democrats are the majority. And in fact, the Senate Democrats have sent a letter to new House Speaker Mr. John Boehner saying they have no intention of taking up the Health Care Act. So that's where we are. We can see this vote underway on this reduction in the House operating budget, and we'll watch here on C-SPAN. And as we watch this vote that would reduce the operating budgets of House committees, leadership offices, and individual member offices by some 5%, about $35 million, according to the press release put out by Congressman Walden. We'll watch this vote go along and read you a story a story we see on the Internet this morning, also on Los Angeles Times, reporting that President Obama has chosen William Daley to serve as his new chief of staff. That reported by Press Secretary Robert Gibbs this morning. Mr. Daley, the former Commerce Secretary under President Clinton, takes over from Pete Rouse, who had been serving as the interim chief of staff. And the story goes on to tell us that Rouse will be given the role of counselor to the president. That's a new position, considered an advancement from his previous position as senior advisor. Here's a story from the Associated Press as we continue to watch this vote on reducing the House operating budget. The AP reporting that House Speaker John Boehner says any increase in the nation's debt limit must include steps to cut federal spending. The Ohio Republican saying the country cannot default on its debt, but neither can it continue to borrow recklessly. His statement comes after the Obama administration notified lawmakers that the government will reach the current debt limit of $14.3 trillion this spring. The debt limit sets a ceiling on the government's borrowing authority, and Mr. Boehner said in his statement it's up to Congress and the President to work closely together to rein in spending. That again from the Associated Press. Watching this 15-minute vote, you can see a few minutes left. Usually these votes go a little longer than 15 minutes, so we'll watch here as the 112th Congress gets back underway this week. And a reminder as we watch this vote to wind down here on the floor of the House. Right now, live on C-SPAN 2, we're watching the House Rules Committee talk about the health care law repeal. You may have seen that next Wednesday, the Republican majority in the House now has announced that they have scheduled a vote to repeal the health care law passed in the previous Congress. And we have live coverage right now from that Rules Committee as they're talking about the rules for the floor debate on that repeal legislation. The name the House Republicans have chosen to call this act, this legislation, is the Job-Killing Health Care Law Act, close quote. And you can also follow that on our website, of course, at cspan.org. The AP reporting that the Obama administration moving to shore up its ties with Arab allies in the Persian Gulf as fears about Iran's nuclear program mount. The administration sending Secretary of State Hillary Clinton on a three-nation trip to the region that begins this weekend. The State Department said Thursday today that Mrs. Clinton will visit the United Arab Emirates, Oman, and Qatar starting Sunday, where she'll hold talks with leaders focused on regional security, the Mideast peace process, and development. That again from the Associated Press. So here we are on the second day of the 112th Congress on the floor of the House. This vote to cut the operating budget there in the House, the leadership offices, committees, members' office budgets by some $35.2 million. We don't anticipate other votes today, although we don't know that positively, so we continue to watch. We do know that the House Rules Committee meeting at this hour. Right now we have live coverage on C-SPAN 2 as they talk about a rule for debate on the repeal of the health care law passed by the last Congress. And should they finish up their work in the Rules Committee, we understand debate could begin on that rule on the floor of the House tomorrow. We continue our live coverage here on C-SPAN. A reminder, you can follow all of this on our website at cspan.org. And we do understand this is the last vote of the day, and as the House Rules Committee wraps up their work today, if they get that done, we will hear a debate on the rule for that health care repeal. The vote on that scheduled for next Wednesday, but there will be a debate on the floor of the House about the rule for that debate tomorrow. This is the last vote of the day here in the House. We expect some special order speeches on various topics by members of Congress, and it looks like this vote is winding down. This is C-SPAN.
10, the noes are 13, two-thirds of those present having voted in the affirmative. The rules are suspended. The resolution is agreed to. Without objection, a motion to reconsider is laid upon the table. We're just on hold for a second. House will be in order. What purpose does the gentleman from Illinois rise?
I must consent to have extraneous materials and a statement entered into the record directly after the reading of the Constitution.
Without objection. Chair will entertain 1-minute speeches. For what purpose does the gentlelady from Tennessee rise? Without objection. Gentlelady is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I humbly rise today to welcome home the heroic soldiers of the 101st Airborne Division's Task Force Raksan after a year deployment in Afghanistan. Mr. Speaker, this morning we read aloud the document we are all sworn to protect and defend. None defend that document and our freedom better than those deployed in harm's way. Many of the members of the Raksans have been deployed 5 times since September 11th. They are part of the most deployed unit in the history of the U.S. Army. They have my profound gratitude for that service. These brave soldiers served in and around coast Afghanistan. Together with their Afghan allies, they took 2,000 insurgents out of the fight and cleared the way for expanded Afghan government. The Raksans arrived in a region that was controlled by the Taliban. They leave an area where children are free to go to school, play cricket, fly kites, all activities that the Taliban forbade. Tomorrow, Tennessee will welcome these heroes home. We will open our arms and embrace them and thank them for their service and their sacrifice. We will also remember those who are not returning. I hope that my colleagues in this body will take a moment today to reflect on how our service should honor the service of those who serve us so well. I yield back.
Time, gentlelady, has expired. What purpose, gentleman from Georgia, rise?
Address the House for 1 minute if I can extend my remarks.
Without objection, gentleman is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And I rise today in memory of Georgia State Patrol Trooper First Class Chadwick LaCroix of Marietta, Georgia, my hometown, who was killed in the line of duty by an unrepentant thug on Monday, December the 27th. At the young age of 38, Mr. LaCroix was a highly respected husband, father, and public servant. He graduated from the 85th Georgia State Patrol Trooper School in August of 2008 and has been a highly respected law enforcement officer in the Atlanta area ever since. Trooper First Class LaCroix is the 27th Georgia State Trooper to be killed in the line of duty, and he leaves behind his wife and 2 young sons. A hero like Trooper First Class LaCroix will not be forgotten, and I join his family and friends in mourning this momentous loss to them. I ask my colleagues to join me in remembering this loyal and heroic Georgian, and I yield back the balance of my time.
Gentleman yields back. Chair asks members to take their conversation off the floor. What purpose, gentlelady from Florida, rise?
Unanimous consent to address the House for 1 minute, revise and extend my remarks.
Without objection, gentlelady is recognized.
Thank you so much, Mr. Speaker. On Saturday, January 29th, the Dan Marino Foundation will host its first annual Walkabout Autism event at Sun Life Stadium in Miami from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. 100% of the proceeds will benefit are South Florida community-based programs that help children with autism and their families. The Center for Disease Control states that 1 out of every 110 children in the U.S. have autism. Autism impairs social interactions and communication skills. While some autistic children will grow up to function in society, others, many others, will need some level of professional care all of their lives. Since its creation in 1992, the Dan Marino Foundation has raised over $30 million to support research, services, and treatment serving children and young adults. I urge all South Floridians to participate and help make this first annual Walkabout Autism event a success. Our combined efforts will help assure that all money raised here stays here and benefits programs in our South Florida community. Let's all walk about autism. Thank you.
Time of the gentlelady has expired. The gentleman from Washington seek recognition. For what purpose does he rise?
Mr. Speaker, you ready for special orders?
Yeah. Okay. Gentleman from Washington.
Mr. Speaker, I ask unanimous consent that today, following legislative business and any special orders that are heretofore entered into, the following members may be permitted to address the House for 5 minutes to revise and extend their remarks and to include therein extraneous material. Ms. Woolsey of California, Ms. Kaptur of Ohio, Mr. DeFazio of Oregon, and Mr. McDermott of Washington.
Without objection, so ordered. For what purpose does the gentleman from Texas rise?
Mr. Speaker, I ask unanimous consent that today, following legislative business and any special orders heretofore entered into, the following members may be permitted to address this House, revise and extend their remarks, and include therein extraneous material. Myself, Mr. Poe, for today, January 7th, 11th, and 12th. Dr. Gingrey for today, Mr. McClintock for today, and January the 7th. Mr. Burton for today, and January the 7th. Mr. Jones for today, January 7th, 11th, and 12th. Mr. Barton for today, Mr. Franks for today, and Mr. Goodlatte for today.
Without objection, so ordered. Under the Speaker's announced policy of January 5th, 2011, under a previous order of the House, the following members are recognized for 5 minutes each. Gentleman from Texas, Mr. Poe.
I would ask unanimous consent to exchange times with Mr. Poe, and that Mr. Barton be allowed to do the 5-minute special order right now, and Mr. Poe be given my time later in the queue.
Is there objection? Without objection, gentleman from Texas, Mr. Barton, is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you. And first of all, Mr. Speaker, I want to thank the gentleman from Houston, Judge Poe, for allowing this to happen. Judge Tom Vandergriff was a member of the House of Representatives from January 1982 until December 1984. He was defeated for re-election in November of 1984 by Dick Armey, moved back to Texas, switched parties from the Republican Party, from the Democrat Party to the Republican Party, and in 1990 was elected county judge, which he served from 1990 to 2007. He passed away on December the 30th, 2010. His memorial service is tomorrow afternoon at the University of Texas at Arlington, Texas Center from 1 till 3. Judge Vandergriff was a personal friend of mine. When I first was given part of Arlington in the redistricting process in 1992, he agreed to be my co-chairman for my campaign. He was just an absolute gentleman and helped in every way possible. One of the most unique things about Judge Vandergriff is that his entire political career, which spanned from 1951 until 2007, he never held a political fundraising event for himself. He did actually accept political contributions, obviously, but he never solicited and he never held an organized political event that he himself organized on his behalf. I thought that was astounding in the modern political era, to be as successful politically as he was without having to go out and do the numerous fundraisers that most of us have to do. We are going to miss Judge Vandergriff. He's got a list of accomplishments a mile long. He was mayor of Arlington from 1951 until 1967. During his tenure as mayor, he was able to get the General Motors assembly plant located in Arlington. He helped get the Texas Rangers, which were then the Washington Senators, to move to Arlington, and was able to attend the World Series this past October, in which he saw the Texas Rangers first of all win the American League and then fight valiantly against the San Francisco Giants, who ultimately won the World Series. He wanted to be a broadcaster, went to USC in Los Angeles, applied for a broadcasting job in 1947 and was not successful in getting that broadcasting job. It went to somebody named Chet Huntley, who later became an anchorman on NBC News. Judge Vandergriff returned to Texas to assume a role in his family's Chevrolet dealership with his father, which he maintained that dealership except for times when he was a U.S. congressman in some capacity. We're going to miss Judge Vandergriff. We give our condolences to his family. Again, he was a member of Congress from 1982 to 1984, and he will be missed. I would now like to yield to Congresswoman Kay Granger, who wishes to speak also on behalf of Judge Vandergriff.
Today we remember with great fondness Tom Vandergriff. Tom was a leader in everything he did. He was a man who saw challenges and tried to solve them. He found opportunities and made them work for us, had a vision that he always reached for. He never accepted the status quo. He was always working for what ought to be. As a successful businessman, a mayor, a member of Congress, and a county judge, he did so much to promote economic development and opportunities to make Tarrant County, Texas, what it is today. Just think of this, starting as he was called a boy mayor. He was 25 years old, served his community by helping Texas bring General Motors, Six Flags Over Texas, the Texas Rangers, all to North Texas. He had a vision to anticipate the needs of a growing community and population. But more than that, he was a decent and kind man. His grace was matched only by his courage, and his personal character was exceeded only by his compassion for others. He was the epitome of a great public servant. He will be missed but not forgotten, and our thoughts or prayers are with him. Thank you.
Denton, Congressman Burgess.
And I thank the gentleman for yielding. And as a member of the Tarrant County delegation, I also want to stand in remembrance of Tom Vandergriff and his 55-year career in public service. 13 years it took him to bring Major League Baseball to Arlington, Texas, and he took the team from Washington, D.C., that was then known as the Senators, had to fight two presidents in a bipartisan fashion, both Lyndon Johnson and Richard Nixon. Judge Vandergriff was the original representative from the 26th District of Texas when it was formed after the 1980 census. My fondest memory of Judge Vandergriff, however, is as the voice of the Texas Rangers. Along with Dick Reisenhoover, he would do the broadcasts, and they were spellbinding and exciting and kept me away from, many times, from my graduate school studies. But to his family, we offer our prayers and condolences. Thank you, Judge Vandergriff, for 55 excellent years in public service.
Time of the gentleman from Texas.
I would ask unanimous consent to revise and extend. And I would also ask, Mr. Speaker, I know we have a new protocol for recognizing former members who passed away. Is it appropriate under our rules to have a moment of silence for Judge Vandergriff? And if so, how would I request such a moment of silence?
The Chair would recommend that the gentleman from Texas consult with the leadership on making such requests.
So it would not be appropriate at this time.
The gentleman is correct, and the gentleman's time is expired.
Thank you.
Under previous order of the House, the gentlelady from California, Ms. Woolsey, is recognized for 5 minutes. Is there objection? Without objection, the gentleman from Washington is recognized for 5 minutes.
I ask unanimous consent to revise consent.
Without objection.
Mr. Speaker, we have a new leader in the House and a new majority. And next week, they're going to begin their legislative activity with a stunt. It's a stunt they're bringing out here to pretend that they're repealing the Accountable Care Act that was passed in the last session. They know it won't pass the Senate. They know the President isn't going to accept it, so it is being done simply for their base. Now, I object to doing stunts like this when they affect real people's lives. I just would ask you to, for a minute, consider what the repeal of this means to middle-class families in this country. I'm a physician. There are other physicians on the floor. They know how this repeal will affect people in this country. In September, we already had go into effect the ability of families to put their children on their health insurance. Repeal will say if you've got a 25-year-old who has cystic fibrosis and is on your health care plan and getting their medications through their health care plan, we're going to take it away from you. That's what they're saying in this. They're saying for pre-existing conditions, if you are trying to get a health care plan and your wife or your son or you have a pre-existing condition, you can be denied by an insurance company. We have already passed a law that says that can't happen. It went in September. And yet the Republicans are going to come out here and say to the middle class in this country, we're going to take away your protection against insurance companies denying you coverage. And it goes on and on and on. But I want to focus on one particular part of this bill. This bill has the largest middle-class tax cut in history. The largest tax cut for the middle class in history. Because the tax cuts in this health care bill to help the middle class are used for giving credits to people when they buy insurance. People buy insurance, they get a tax credit. It is the largest one in history. Let me say that again so you get it. They are going to vote next week. They're going to stand out here with a straight face and vote to repeal the largest middle-class tax cut in the history of this great nation. It will be worth $110 billion that they will take away from the middle class. Now, a few weeks ago, we passed a tax bill out of here, and we had to give tax cuts to people who make millions and millions of dollars. Millions. They said, if you don't give the tax cuts to the rich, we're not going to give them to the middle class. The entire Republican caucus voted against tax cuts unless millionaires got it. Well, we should have learned from that this repeal will be just more of the same. Take $110 billion away from the middle class by taking a repeal of this law. You don't have to take it from me. This isn't me making this up. Families USA, which is a nonpartisan group, has put out this information, and everybody understands it. Now, upstairs in the Rules Committee right now, I could be up there talking, but I decided I'd talk here first, and then I'll go up there and try and get this amendment offered in the bill that will be on Friday. Allison Swartz and Gwen Moore are up there already working on this, but it would prevent repeal effort from increasing taxes on moderate income or low income individuals including through the elimination of tax credits for health care premiums as provided under the health care reform law. We would exempt that one part out of the repeal. I don't know what success I'll have up there, but we'll go and try, because it's worth trying. It's worth pointing out how absolutely unthinking it is, a mindless thing to come out here with this repeal. And I yield back the balance of my time.
The chair recognizes the gentleman from